Hello, on behalf of Current and Public Media Futures, I want to welcome you to the 2022 Local That Works Grand Finale. Today, we are celebrating innovative ways that local public service media are providing civic value to their communities. I'm Mariana Dale, and I'm delighted to be your host for this final event in the annual Local That Works contest. I cannot wait for you to see the inspiring work of our finalists. Local That Works launched in 2016 to spotlight exceptional and replicable examples of localism in public broadcasting. Since then, the project has expanded to include nonprofit newsrooms, digital startups, ethnic media, and legacy newspapers. More than 600 examples of local initiatives are published in a database at current.org/localthatworks. Check it out and find a few ideas worth stealing. Wyncote Foundation has generously supported Local That Works since its inception, including today's grand finale and the $20,000 grand prize. Thank you, Wyncote Foundation. So here's what's coming up. Over the next 45 minutes, you'll meet the 5 finalists in this year's contest as they each present a short video about their project. Then you'll get to vote for the project you think is the best local initiative that deserves the $20,000 grand prize. Only those that stay through the end of this grand finale will have the opportunity to vote. So stick around, watch and listen carefully, and then cast your ballot. Before we say goodbye today, we'll reveal the winner. Now, to make sure the balloting is fair, we ask that employees and board members from finalist organizations refrain from voting. Now it's time to introduce our finalists. Injustice Watch for Check Your Judges, Cap Radio for After the Assault, the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, TPT Twin Cities PBS for Mini Histories, and Outlier Media for Vote with Confidence, a guide from Detroit Documenters. We'll start today with Check Your Judges. It's a project of Injustice Watch, a Chicago-based nonprofit, nonpartisan journalism organization that focuses on issues of equity and justice in the court system. Joining us from Injustice Watch is Executive Director Juliet Sorensen. Congratulations on being a finalist in the Local That Works contest.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about where the idea for Check Your Judges originated?
The idea for Check Your Judges really originated with the founding of Injustice Watch back in 2015. Cook County has one of the largest unified court systems in the world, and nearly all of Cook County's 400 judges are elected. So you see all of those names at the bottom of your ballot, and it is simply too many for anyone, even somebody who works within the Cook County court system, a practicing lawyer who's there every day. It's simply too much for anyone to make an informed decision as a voter about each and every one of those judges. So Injustice Watch saw a need and an opportunity. We set out to fill that information gap with a deep dive nonpartisan guide about every single judge on the ballot. And to be sure that our judicial elections guide reaches the electorate here in Cook County, we started a large-scale community engagement campaign called Check Your Judges.
And what do you know about the impact of the project and how many folks you reached?
So what we know is that voting in judicial elections has trended upward steadily over time since we produced our very first judicial elections guide back in 2016. We also know that in the last 2 judicial elections in 2018 and 2020, voters voted in each of those not to retain a sitting judge. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but the last time that happened was well over 20 years ago in the face of a massive federal investigation into bribery in the Cook County court system. We also, of course, track users, track engagement, and we also track the distribution of the print copies of our guide. This year, we've printed more than 300,000 copies of our judicial elections guide for both the primary and the general election.
Well, thank you, Juliet. Our judges applauded your efforts to empower voters with useful information. Now let's watch your video.
Judges make decisions on your life. They are the most powerful of any political apparatus. It's so important for people to recognize the court systems. You know, there was a war on drugs, and there were many young men have been locked up.
Although, you know, I wasn't selling drugs, the drugs weren't mine, the judge as well basically held a gun to my head, if you will, metaphorically, by saying that if I didn't accept the time, I would be spending a lot more time in prison. I spent 24 years. I ended up getting out early. One of the reporters from Injustice Watch contacted me and wanted to know about my experience. He forwarded me the email about the Judicial Guide.
Injustice Watch is a nonprofit, nonpartisan journalism organization focused on issues of systemic inequity in the courts. Cook County is one of the largest unified court systems in the world. There are 400 judges, and almost all of them are elected.
Judges are deciding things like whether or not you're guilty of a crime, whether or not you're going to keep your kids, and they're life-altering decisions.
But very little is actually known and reported on the day-to-day jobs of these really important officials. So for every single judicial election, we produce a nonpartisan judicial elections guide that has information about every single judicial candidate on the ballot.
We basically approach it the way the journalists approach any story. Each one of these candidates, we go through everything we can find about them. We file FOIA requests, look into their campaign finance, review everything that's ever been written about them by other news organizations. We send out surveys with questions that are specifically tailored to get a sense of who people are. And then we conduct pretty extensive interviews with people who have experience with these judges. You go to our website, injusticewatch.org, you click on the guide. As you scroll down through it, you'll see each of the candidates listed in the same order that they appear on the ballot. You can also click on a little info button that'll show you a full write-up of what we have on that candidate. And the guide is also available in Spanish. Until this organization started, there was really nothing that voters could use as a comprehensive source of information. We're the only nonpartisan, non-endorsing, independently researched voter guide.
I believe information is power. I can't stress enough how important it was to have that judicial guide when I went in that booth.
The empowering part is you can make a sound decision and don't have to guess which one I'm gonna vote for. If you don't have the right judges in office that can have a heart for the people, we're gonna continue that cycle that we went through for the last 40 years.
Injustice Watch is primarily a digital outlet, but we are conscious of the digital divide. For the Judicial Elections Guide, we do a print edition as well, and we partner with news outlets across Cook County.
The Chicago Reader and some other local newspapers that are inserting the guide into the print issue of their newspapers.
Using the Metra system, the PACE, CTA, I went back and forth between Southside Chicago to Harvey, delivering these voter guides across the south suburbs. There clearly is a need for more stories and conversations about the court system. Being able to collaborate with Injustice Watch, it's very pro-democracy and it's very pro-local news.
We partner with community-based organizations to distribute our guide to voters in the Cook County Jail and other people who may find it more accessible in print.
We provide distribution request form. You can go and fill out the form. One person who came and got 10,000 copies of the guide was Reverend Robin Hood of Mothers Opposed to Violence Everywhere.
Judges?
Yep.
And want you to vote for people you don't know nothing about?
The biggest thing to us is to educate our people on all the judges. I'm just looking forward to this. At least for the next 20 years, I plan on working.
We look at the court system and who it has impacted, and we try to serve those communities. And so we also intend to community events in which our editors will be present, our reporters will be present. They can come to us with requests beyond this judicial voting guide, but also take copies of our guide.
It's an essential part of our society that public offices are transparent. I have seen the narrative shift in the community dialogue about voting in down-ballot races, specifically in judicial elections. People realize that it matters, that their vote counts.
And I think it also places judges on notice as well. It's like you are being watched, and we're going to inform people about it.
It's created a greater sense of accountability for judges. It's positively contributed to like a more engaged civic culture in Cook County.
Best of luck to Injustice Watch. We'll now move from Chicago to Sacramento to hear about a different kind of project related to justice after the assault from Cap Radio. Here's a closer look.
Hi, I'm reaching out to you because a connection of a connection thought you might be interested in covering a story on police response to sexual assault. The response was egregious, and I know my experience is not an outlier. If you're interested, let me know how we can move forward. Thanks. I decided to contact Cap Radio about my experience because I knew that there was no path to pursue with the police. The only thing that I could do at that point was get my story out there and say what had happened to me, in the hopes that for when this does happen to women in the future, the police's response can be better for them.
I got an email from a survivor in Sacramento County who wanted to talk about her experiences when she tried to report a rape to law enforcement. And I wanted to figure out if this happened to other survivors. And I realized that if I were a victim of sexual violence, I wouldn't know the steps. I started to try to find out what the process for investigating sexual assault looked like in Sacramento County. I tried to find out what the arrest rates were and what the conviction rates were. And if I were in the aftermath of a trauma, I can't even imagine how hard it would be to try to navigate that process.
One of the things that was really painful for me when I went to the police was that they had taken my story and the police had not gotten it right. I knew that I couldn't have that happen to my story again. So early on, I told the Cap Radio journalists that this story needed to be told with survivors and not for survivors, that they needed to be involved in the process.
So we started exploring ways we could collaborate with survivors to tell their stories. And we ended up forming a survivor cohort that we met with monthly. This was 8 women. They were different ages, economic, racial backgrounds. Some had reported to law enforcement and some hadn't. Some had been recently assaulted, some were a couple years out. And they collaborated with us over the course of 2 years and shaped every aspect of the project.
For me, that one of the concerns I had of working with journalists, especially in such a sensitive territory and with so much vulnerability, just taking that risk and being open and knowing that it's, for posterity and that we're doing this for a bigger purpose.
I have no experience with, journalists. I was completely blinded by what to expect. So for me, all I had was negative aspects of sharing my story with dealing with the detectives and even some family members. So it was very scary for me.
You put the power of choice in our lap rather than saying, this is what we're going to do. Come along if you agree. You gave us these choices and let us decide what's best for us.
Share one word that you would use to describe our reporting team's approach to working with you to tell your story.
Flexible.
Empathetic.
I'll go with safe.
Inclusive.
Collaborative.
So from the beginning, we tried to involve both survivors and law enforcement. We started with a stakeholder convening, which was a group of law enforcement officials and medical professionals and legal experts. We got them all in a room, and I asked them to help me understand the reporting process. So we set out this big whiteboard, and I wrote with a marker what I understood to be the process, a timeline, step by step by step. And then when we had everybody together, we gave out Post-its, and we said, write on a Post-it if you see a problem in this process. Where do cases fall through the cracks? Where are there holdups?
There was an initial sense of defensiveness because, I've been doing this almost 33 years. It's like, okay, well, this is what we do. And as we got on with the project, what really emerged was a level of trust. And that trust was born out of all of us being vulnerable with each other. We were able to see blind spots or gaps that we maybe hadn't seen before on all sides. That was one of the gaps we discovered, is that when police officers remove ourselves to make sure we're being that professional person, but we're identifying evidence, identifying suspects, apprehending criminals, what we're missing sometimes is the emotional piece that the victim is not feeling heard, or worse, they're not feeling believed or accused. Maybe they even feel like we're accusing them just by virtue of how we're asking questions. That was a pivotal moment to me.
So one deliverable that came out of the reporting that is extremely helpful for Weave is that there is a toolkit. It goes from what happens, like if you are assaulted, when you are assaulted, all the steps that go through, who do you contact, what do you do, what are your options, what are the resources within the community. So every person who gets a forensic exam within Sacramento County actually gets that resource.
One of the really important outcomes of this was being able to speak truth to power and to say, this is an injustice, is part of what helps me heal instead of staying quiet.
Finally, we were being listened to and heard without judgment.
By being a part of this project, it helped me understand more on what healing can look like.
I always hoped that my work would have some kind of impact, but I never designed for that impact. And having survivors involved from the beginning and asking them how journalism could be helpful to them was a game changer.
I'd really like journalists to apply what's been learned from after the assault to the way that they do journalism all the time. After the assault was just one example about survivors of sexual assault. It's just one marginalized group. But there's so many marginalized groups in the United States and around the world. And I think that that kind of framework can help report about those people's experiences from their perspectives. And those are the perspectives that we don't always see.
We're now joined by Sammy Kayola, the lead reporter and host for After the Assault. Welcome to the Local That Works grand finale.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
The judges said that bringing together civic organizations and communities is Cap Radio's superpower, and the multimedia output of this project was really impressive. Now, Sammy, I understand that After the Assault also produced a conversation starter kit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. This is a resource we wanted to create for people who want to have a conversation around sexual assault, but don't know how. This might be because you've experienced it yourself, or you might have a loved one who you want to be able to help, or you might just want to spread awareness in your group so that everybody can do better as an ally to survivors. So what we were able to do was create an online kit that includes how to set up a conversation in your own circle. That might be a Girl Scout troop or a church or just a dinner table. It includes a primer that has lots of statistics and terminology. And then it has clips that are sorted by category and question. So maybe you want to talk about what is a sexual assault crime? What's the legal definition in California? Or maybe you want to talk about what can I do if someone discloses that this has happened to them? And we feed people the audio clips from the podcast, really curated for each of those questions.
Now, this project originally started in 2019. Sammy, how did you ensure that it made it across the finish line even during the pandemic?
Yeah, this was really tough. We had been meeting with survivors and law enforcement and rape crisis advocates in person to get all of this investment in this really important project. And then when COVID-19 happened, I was our station's only healthcare reporter. So I was suddenly full-time reporting on all of the breaking news coming out of that. And I had to be really transparent with survivors that I was going to have to put a bit of a pause on after the assault, and I was going to have to take things a little more slowly with that project. And I knew that it was going to be hard for some of them because they were investing so much with us. But fortunately, we were able to move our in-person meetings onto Zoom and keep meeting and keep up our group dynamic and continue to try to make them feel cared for, even though we had a lot going on. And so when it came time to go back to the reporting and really produce the full podcast, we never had lost all of the work we had done together, and it allowed us to continue collaborating.
Well, thank you, Sammy, for telling us more about After the Assault, and good luck.
Thanks so much.
We turn now to the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, a journalism initiative focused on reporting on solutions and encouraging public engagement around the crisis of Utah's shrinking Great Salt Lake. Let's see what the collaborative's all about.
A looming environmental nuclear bomb in Utah. The mighty Great Salt Lake is drying up.
I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that the Great Salt Lake presents an existential crisis.
Potentially deadly down the road as this dust is filled with cancer-causing, naturally occurring arsenic.
So the predictions for these species are really dire. If we can't get water to the lake, this ecosystem crashes.
The Great Salt Lake Collaborative is a coalition of news media organizations, academic institutions, advocacy groups, calling attention to the lake, why it's so important, and why we need to save it.
For the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, we partnered on a local media project launched by Solutions Journalism Network Initiative, and they received support from the Knight Foundation.
Solutions Journalism Network reached out and asked if there were any wicked problems in Utah. And that group ultimately decided that we wanted to focus on the Great Salt Lake.
So initially I was skeptical and suspicious of the Great Salt Lake Collaborative.
Some of our staffers had questions. Wait a minute, we're going to work with someone who we think is our rival.
But I will say it's had a lot of benefits.
If I can't get a reporter to a meeting or to a story, but another member of the collaborative can, then all of a sudden we both have that content. All of us have that content.
When everybody's united, you have a wider range of resources, you have a wider range of viewpoints, you have a wider range of sources, and ultimately it benefits the same community that you're here to serve.
So one example of where the collaborative has really helped our reporting are the stories that we're publishing this week. We just sent a team of reporters from my news organization, the Deseret News, from our friendly competitor, the Salt Lake Tribune, and also from Fox 13. And together they went to California to collect interviews and video and images and to bring home this story of what struggling saline lakes in California were experiencing, the impact it had on those communities, and solutions that they're trying to find and implement there in California.
And the story map that we used was stunning. And it would not be possible for us to produce that story map on our sltrip.com platform.
And so I think that the goals we have of working collaboratively can hopefully reach further into our community than if we tried to tackle this individually. Without the collaborative, our news directors and reporters and videographers would not have had the opportunity to do that.
But it's a different shift in how we do journalism, and I'm kind of getting into it. Another great thing that the collaborative does is we get out in the community.
We did a lot of festivals in the summer, and we sat down and we talked with people about the Great Salt Lake.
And we had a trivia night.
We're doing events at public libraries.
We've hosted panel discussions with the experts.
We've done daily reports for media outlets about what's happening at the Great Salt Lake.
We've had farmers market booths that have been great, where I get to meet people and talk to them about it.
We have conducted tours for policymakers and community members at the Great Salt Lake. We have recorded stories from individuals throughout the state.
Being able to bring people together who care about something has also been a pretty powerful experience.
And also sign up for our newsletter. We have a newsletter.
The news side of the collaborative is really only half of it. Another really great benefit here is that we have partners in the collaborative who are researchers, who are in academia and education, who make the Great Salt Lake a focus of their work every single day.
Storytelling is so powerful, and it leads to this collaboration between scientists and the community and eventually policymakers.
There are times that I have felt very frustrated about what we see at the lake and the inability to have that message received.
Being part of the Northwestern Band of Shoshone Nation, the Great Salt Lake is in the heart of our ancestral land. If we're going to solve the problem, it's going to take an indigenous voice as well as the science. Native Americans have a way of connecting here and not here, but it's through here is when you can affect change.
I made some efforts from my academic place in co-editing the first book on Great Salt Lake biology, co-writing the first children's book on Great Salt Lake to try to get the science to the fourth graders.
The collaboratives helped me touch hearts by giving me a voice as a tribal elder, as a storyteller. Give me the platform to touch hearts, and they've done that.
The academic book is now a really important resource for what lives in the lake and how the food chains work. The children's book is all over schools in Utah. Great Salt Lake Collaborative has really been a part of that momentum.
As we collaborate and weave together this knowledge, that's where real magic happens. And so the collaborative has really allowed me the opportunity to be a part of a team.
The Great Salt Lake Collaborative, I think, has made me a better scientist.
They did a survey asking Utahns how they feel about the Great Salt Lake and its well-being, and 80% are concerned. 73% also said they would like Utah lawmakers to address the issue.
We are starting to notice an impact, both from a policy level and on the street.
Is it time for more mandatory restrictions on what people can do with water?
Well, look, you've covered this well, Ben, and many of you in this room, and I appreciate the collaboration that is happening there.
I want to thank our friends in the media for the great work that they've done related to the Great Salt Lake. They've really spread the message about the Great Salt Lake in a way that has engaged Utahns and helped bring us together, and I think that's a great role that they can play.
And this is an indication that what we're sharing through this collaborative is having an impact.
The way it's shaping the news around Great Salt Lake is so beautiful.
I'd say the most gratifying part of the process has been watching reporters, journalists, videographers, photographers from other organizations and ours get to work together. That's really fun.
I mean, if you want to see how important the work the collaborative is doing, just look at who we are. We're competing news outlets who have come together to do a joint reporting effort to try to tell the community what kind of a situation we're facing with the Great Salt Lake.
I'm just ever so grateful to the media members of the collaborative for letting me be in the room sometimes.
It's been great to see it actually reaching people where they're like, oh, I know this, you know, and I've seen them share it on Instagram, or I've seen them share it on Twitter. Information is knowledge, knowledge is power.
Joining me is Heather May, project manager of the Great Salt Lake Collaborative. One of our judges called this project the perfect trifecta of collaboration, engagement, and solutions journalism. Now, Heather, you have a tremendous number of partners working on this initiative. There are 23 of them. Can you give me an example of how everyone works together?
Yes, thank you. I wish we could have highlighted all of our partners in the video. Like you said, we have 23 of them. We're one of the largest collaboratives in the Solutions Journalism Local Media Project. And each is amplifying the work of the group in really important ways. So I'll give you two quick examples. We have an audience survey. About 500 people have filled it out, and they ask questions about the lake. So we've hired a college journalist who's one of our partners, and she answers those questions. That's on our website. Then newsrooms run those Q&As in their newspapers or online. A public library turned the Q&As into a zine for their Alt Press Fest that they recently had. And a public radio station has recorded them for an on-air story. And they created a digital animation where a cartoon brine shrimp answers those questions.
Amazing shrimp journalism. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how you all are measuring the impact of this collaborative.
That's a great question. So the impact has been huge. We have collectively produced, I'm estimating about 150 stories just since January is when we launched, but we actually didn't start producing until March. So 150 stories since March. We've done 5 tours of the Great Salt Lake. We've done 5 library events. We created a 400+ page anthology filled with about 200 stories from the community about the lake. And we held one gala to celebrate all of that work with about 225 people who attended. We've also become a real magnet for, I would say, excitement, interest, and hope. So we have student journalists contacting us wanting to participate. We have a marketer wanting to help us. We have filmmakers. We have more newsrooms who want to join. So this has really sparked, I think the solutions journalism part of it is what's igniting this major interest.
Well, good luck to you, Heather, and the rest of the Great Salt Lake Collaborative.
Thank you so much.
Now for our next finalist, we are heading to Minneapolis to TPT Twin Cities PBS, the producer of Mini Histories, a series of TikToks about Minnesota history. Let's watch their video.
In the past 2 years of making TikToks for Twin Cities PBS, Mini Histories has been our best example of how to use the platform to connect with our audiences. Hi, my name is Ann Gettridge, and I'm an associate producer at Twin Cities PBS, and I'm the creator of the Mini History series on our TikTok account. At TPT, we produce really interesting, impactful documentaries for broadcast, but younger audiences aren't watching broadcast. To reach them where they are and to show relevancy in their lives, I pull from those documentaries to create content just for TikTok.
In 1945, the second most popular woman in America wasn't a real person.
Did you know we can thank Black Minnesotan inventor Frederick McKinley Jones for being able to eat blueberries in February?
The Metrodome was a weird place.
What if instead of fixing pollution in existing cities, we just built new ones?
With Mini Histories, we share bite-sized pieces of history that feeds off of our viewers' natural curiosity, and it feels like it belongs on TikTok. In just a minute, viewers get a primer on an unfamiliar piece of Minnesota history, whether it's an event, a person, or a place. The name Mini Histories actually comes from a short broadcast series, and I love the name so much that I totally stole it.
So Mini Histories started as PSAs, as 30-second shorts to be run during PBS Kids programming, giving local children an introduction to diverse Minnesota history. And that was successful and won a regional Emmy Award, but obviously with that linear strategy, we were missing a lot of potential audience, like older teens, Gen Z, and young millennials. And that's where Ann's TikTok strategy came in and amplified the impact by the thousands.
I was lucky enough to get to work on Mini Histories, so I knew right away that it would be perfect for TikTok. We could take the same eye-catching visuals and quick storytelling, but include twice as much information for an online audience that wants more of the story.
And the success of Mini Histories really points towards a strong hunger for informational and educational content on the platform. With more content like Mini Histories, we can become a leader in the educational space on the platform.
This is the part where I emphasize that TikTok is not just an app for dancing teenagers. While true, 40% of Gen Z spends 3+ hours on the app a day, roughly 36% of the US population over 12 is on TikTok. It's also the 3rd most popular social media app across all ages. So clearly there are a lot of people on the platform. So why wouldn't we try to be a part of it?
So why does it work? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We tell really interesting local stories in an entertaining, engaging, and super personal style.
We've gained more followers from this series than any other type of content we post, and that's because audiences recognize they can't get this kind of content from just anyone. In this way, we've been able to carve a niche for ourselves by being both educational and entertaining.
And then there's Ann. She will not tell you herself, but she understands the platform and the audience on TikTok in such a nuanced way. Some might say she's perfected the art of the TikTok.
To be honest, I was never really a history buff, but every time I get to dive into a new piece of Minnesota history, I like to invite the audience in on that excitement and that sense of adventure that I get by learning new things. I'd like to think that that kind of infectious joy comes across on camera and communicates to our audience that there's a lot of cool things to learn about our state. To show you what this actually looks like, I want to play my favorite example of a mini history TikTok. I present to you the truth about Betty.
In 1945, the second most popular woman in America wasn't a real person. That's right, she was a marketing campaign that started right here in Minnesota. I'm here to break it to you that Betty Crocker wasn't real.
Hello, I'm Betty Crocker.
The woman we know and love for cake mixes, holiday cookies, and for that iconic red spoon logo was started in 1921 by the Washburn Crosby Company. It all started when the company put out an ad for gold medal flour in the Saturday Evening Post and encouraged readers to complete a puzzle to win a pincushion prize shaped like a small bag of flour. The company received 30,000 completed puzzles, and many were accompanied by baking questions. At first, the advertising department consulted the Gold Medal Home Services staff to answer questions, but the manager thought that the women writing in would rather hear from another woman. They needed someone who could be a cooking authority, but of course, graceful and nurturing. And so, Betty Crocker was born. I want you to keep in mind that just because the content itself is short doesn't mean that it's not a super low effort. Now granted, it's nothing compared to a documentary or a digital series, but that 1-minute TikTok still took me about 10 hours. With that video, there was a lot of research, I shot on location, of course all the editing, but once it's published, one of my favorite things is to see how the audience interacts with the content. Seeing people reminisce, express surprise, and ask additional questions really helps us feel like we're building a community on TikTok.
Watch that video, it's super interesting. I just got a piece of nostalgia from gold medal flour that I wanted to share with y'all.
When people ask questions, we can respond right away with answers, and we can even make additional videos with content that didn't quite fit in the original post, letting our audience dive even deeper into the subject. What if the Minnesota Experimental City was built? I thought I'd answer some more questions in this video. Because these videos are bite-sized, we can cover a lot of topics, pretty much anything we want. And it's a great opportunity to highlight stories and people especially that didn't get their moment in history. My favorite comments are, "Why didn't we learn about this school? This is so important." To me, it shows that people understand the value of diverse stories and that TikTok is the place to share them. Finally, unlike broadcast, our TikTok is not limited to our signal's reach. When I hit publish, that video is going out to the entire internet. Even though our videos have a hyper-local focus, they reach a broader audience, allowing our station to connect with audiences locally, nationally, and even internationally. What started out as a fun way to share small pieces of history has turned into a much larger, grander, exciting project. Mini Histories is an example of how to share local storytelling with new platforms and new audiences, and have some fun in the process.
Joining us now is Anne Guttridge, the creator of Mini Histories. Welcome, Anne.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm curious, how have Mini Histories evolved since you first started making them, and what have you learned in that process?
They have changed a lot, I think, in the past couple of years since starting TikTok. We've tried to figure out, what exactly people are engaging with. And so ever since I implemented an actual script writing process, that really benefited the actual videos. Figuring out the balance of visuals, and then also making sure I'm bringing other people into the fold and seeing what ideas do people have, what ideas do people at the station, everyone's so knowledgeable. So especially as someone who didn't grow up in Minnesota, it's been really helpful to kind of lean on other people and implement them into the process as well.
And we also heard in the video that your videos are reaching people on TikTok, well outside of Minnesota. What's been your most popular one, and how many people have watched it?
So the Betty Crocker video does have 1.8 million views. And I think our Metrodome video has about 800,000. So not quite there, but getting there. And so those videos in combination with everything else, I think it around 3,500,000 views in total with this whole series. And that just goes to show that, while these videos do have a really hyper-local focus, like I say in my video, they have also a national and even international impact depending on the subject.
Well, it's been a delight to watch some of these mini histories. Thank you so much, Anne. Good luck to you and the whole team at TPT.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Now, our last finalist is Outlier Media for Vote with Confidence, a guide from Detroit documenters. Let's learn more about this project.
The Detroit Documenters program is a group of highly engaged residents who are trained and paid to operate as the eyes and ears at local government meetings. We have more than 300 people living in and around Detroit who do this work with us. Now, because the documenters are so present at these meetings, they are pretty familiar with civic processes and government offices and positions and responsibilities. And so that means that they tend to have an idea for what we need to do to extend our news coverage and what other kinds of information could be helpful to Detroiters so that they can become more informed and engaged. Sonia Stuckey, who is one of our documenters, had an idea for the group to produce a nonpartisan voting guide, and she came to the discussion table with deep background research and a massive outline for how it could work. And so with the help of the Detroit Documenters coordinators and Outlier Media reporters and editors, they created a guide to help Detroiters consider their own values and priorities, and also clarified the power of public officials and encouraged voting in the primary. And so the guide also taught readers how to research candidates and, of course, how to cast their ballot in person and as an absentee voter. And we still consider that the project of the year so far.
My name is Sonia Stuckey, and I live in the city of Detroit, Michigan, and I work for Detroit Documenters. Before I got into being a documenter, I was a Montessori teacher for 28 years. So I did a lot of work with children and families. I always wanted to write. The only reason that I did not pursue a career in journalism was because I had multiple children, and I never wanted to leave my kids with babysitters, but now I am so excited about picking up my writing again.
This is a means of getting Detroiters more civically involved in their city. We then work with local newsrooms and reporters who take those notes, edit them, fact check them, and then we publish everything for free for anyone to use and read online at documenters.org. Documenters is more, though, than just covering meetings. The documenters make a difference for the city. We've seen more public comments at meetings since we began covering them. Residents are getting more of their concerns addressed. Important votes are getting more scrutiny. And there's been a real impact on people's lives. But the documenters are also building community and helping create the Detroit that they want to see today and in the future. A more engaged, a more equitable, and a more participatory city. We have a dedicated reporter working with the Documenters Network to make sure that questions the documenters have after attending these meetings are adequately covered.
It was always my passion to do, I did a lot of literacy education with families, and I always felt like civic literacy was very important. When mail would come, flyers and things, they're only telling you who to vote for, who to endorse, who they've endorsed. They're not explaining the process to you. They don't know what left or right means. They don't know what conservative means. They don't, it's, just so many things that people don't know. They don't even know what a public official was supposed to do in some cases. And so I just wanted to have something that was comprehensive, that people could get all the information, the truth, and the facts, and then they could make their decision with some knowledge.
I'm just really curious about city government. I'm really curious about how this city is run, and to see how it's run, it's kind of upsetting sometimes to see how it's run. And it feels kind of powerless sometimes. So if I could at least document it and share the word, like what's going on in the city, it would make some kind of a difference.
Documenters are watchdogs, but they're also a community of practice. When documenters have questions, they're empowered to investigate further, and at times we're able to support developing that into a project like this voter's guide. The Documenters program provides an empowering opportunity for anybody to learn more about their city and become civically active, while at the same time getting paid, growing their skills, and networking with professionals. Once they get started, our Documenters become curious, educated, excited, intrigued, involved, and grateful for the experience. I think it's important to mention the Voters Guide was successful because it's written by Detroiters who know what Detroiters care about, and it empowers their fellow citizens to understand and take action. Also, because of the collaboration with media partners who helped edit, cross-publish, and promote it. Both Noah and I were Detroit Documenters, and now we're working full-time in the best news organization in Detroit. And we're creating opportunities for all these other Documenters to make civic involvement a bigger part of their lives. We also collaborate with Documenters programs in Chicago, Cleveland, Atlanta, and a growing number of cities because we can learn from each other and make this country better together.
You guys helped my dream come true. I wanted to do something in the area of voting, and hopefully it will have a lasting effect. But you're helping people to get through their daily lives better, and they're feeling more empowered, and I think that's great. I plan to write until I'm not here anymore.
We're joined now by Erin Perry, Managing Editor of Outlier Media. Welcome to Local That Works.
Thank you so much, Mariana. I'm very excited to be here.
The judges really felt that this project was an important strategy to strengthen democracy by increasing voter engagement. And can you tell us a little bit more about what makes this voter guide unique?
Well, this voter guide is unique because it was done in complete collaboration. One of our documenters came to us with this idea of a nonpartisan voter guide, and we thought it was fantastic. It wasn't like your typical endorsement guide, which are plentiful around election time and are pretty much everywhere, but those kinds of guides are really candidate focused, and we wanted to start even earlier than that as part of the decision-making process and to make sure that our guide was voter focused. So this guide is really like Voting in Detroit 101. So we produced this beautiful guide with a plethora of community voices that really explain the importance of the primary election. It explained how to reach public officials, how to research voting records, and how to cast a ballot. And then we really feel like any news organization anywhere can replicate this approach to the communities that they serve.
And what do you know about the impact that Vote with Confidence had and has had?
It was, still is, it remains the most viewed article of any article that we published in 2022. And in fact, more than half of our page views for the voter guide were from the day of the primary election, despite having published that several weeks before. So it's pretty clear that people needed a resource to make up their minds on the day of the election. We know that a large portion of people found the guide through our media partners who have linked to that guide and have cross-published it. We know that, I should say that perhaps our most notable accomplishment from that guide is that it really started as a digital-only project, and it ended up being printed by the Detroit Metro Times, which is an alternative weekly publication, and they printed it on their cover. So they saw this digital product and they said, you know what, let us reprint that for you and put it in 1,200 news boxes around the city. And so, you know, it's really just evidence that our documenters are a very special group of people with exceptional, very useful ideas that we really were able to take to another level. They really are the reason why there is no wall between our community and the Outlier Media newsroom.
Well, thank you, Erin, for giving us more behind this project, and good luck to Outlier Media and the Detroit Documenters.
Thank you so much, Mariana.
So now we've seen 5 presentations from the finalists. All are inspiring initiatives that other media organizations can replicate or be inspired by in some way in their communities, in your communities. The judges had a tough time going from 96 projects down to these 5, but now the hardest job of all is yours. It is time for you to decide who should win the $20,000 grand prize. Which of these projects do you think best represents Local That Works, the most inspiring, innovative, replicable model of media that creates civic value? Time to select the winner. We're going to put up a series of slides that explains how to vote. You will only have 2 minutes to cast your ballot. So grab your phone and text LTW 2022 to this number, 22333. After you text, you'll get a reply back telling you that you have joined the session. After the reply, you will need to text A, B, C, D, or E, representing the project that you want to support. So here are those letters again. It is A for Check Your Judges from Injustice Watch, B for After the Assault from Cap Radio, C for the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, D for Mini Histories from TPT, and E for Vote with Confidence, a guide from the Detroit Documenters and Outlier Media. After you send in your vote, you'll get a response confirming your choice. Now, for those who prefer to vote online and not using your cell phone, we've got an option for you too. You can use the URL on the screen, and it's also posted in the chat. It's pollev.com/LTW2022. Once you're there, just click on the project you think should win. Again, you can send a text to 22333 with LTW 2022 in the message, and then you can text the letter of the project that you're voting for. So for Check Your Judges from an Injustice Watch, that's going to be texting the letter A. For After the Assault from Cap Radio, you text the letter B. For the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, you text the letter C. For Mini Histories, text the letter D. And for Vote with Confidence from Detroit Documenters, text the letter E. Now, while you're voting, let's take a moment to thank this year's judges: Jan Boyd, Kristen Hare, Andrew Devigal, Christine Page Deers, Julie Drizzen, and Mark First. All right. Voting is now closed, and it is time to bring our finalists back to the stage. All right, welcome. I want to check in and see how everyone is feeling. Juliet, first, let's go to you.
I'm feeling great. So excited and honored to be here. Thank you, Mariana.
And Sammy, tell us how it's going.
I'm a little nervous. I just can't wait to hear what happens. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for sharing your project with us. And let's go over to Utah and talk to Heather.
Oh, I'm so nervous and excited and proud to be in your company.
And let's go to another kind of chilly place. Let's go to Minnesota. Anne, how's it going?
Good. I'm nervous, excited, really honored. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be a part of this.
And finally, Aaron in Detroit, how are you feeling right now?
Silent in this room. My heart is so.
It's a little hard to hear you, but I can hear that you are excited, and it seems like that is a feeling that's shared by many of the folks here. And we are going to get to announcing the grand prize winner and relieve you from some of that tension. But first, we have a bit of a surprise. Thanks to the Wincoat Foundation, each of the finalists is going to receive a $5,000 reward. So congratulations to all of you. It is so well deserved. And now we are just waiting for the votes to be totaled so that we can make the announcement for the grand prize winner. I also am starting to feel the anticipation. All right. We have a winner, and that winner is the Great Salt Lake Collaborative. Heather, congratulations.
Shut up. I can't believe that. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome. What a true and tremendous team effort, Heather. I know words are challenging, but what is going through your mind right now?
Oh, wow. I'm so proud of our team and that we've been able to build consensus about an environmental topic in a red state. So I'm freaking out. Thank you so much.
This has been just a tremendous effort, dozens of newsrooms coming together. What's one step the folks watching right now can take toward putting together a project like this, a collaborative like this?
Well, I think every community is dealing with environmental change. And so I think you should pick your own wicked problem and find passionate partners. And I think the focus on solutions is what has brought hope to the community, which I think everybody is really yearning for. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Well, Heather, congratulations again. Congratulations to everyone that is part of the Great Salt Lake Collaborative. Now, I want to do a big round of thank yous because it's also a collaboration that makes Local That Works possible. So thank you to everyone who entered the Local That Works contest. Thank you to all of our tremendous, I keep saying that word, but I think it really sums up the finalists that we all just heard from. Thanks to all of you. Thank you to our judges, and thank you to everyone who joined us today, watched, listened, and voted for the winner. Thanks to the Wyncote Foundation, in particular David Haas, who has funded and encouraged the growth of Local That Works over the last 6 years, and who made that additional reward possible for all of our finalists today. Thank you to Mark First and Julie Drizzen. They direct the Local That Works project and produce today's webcast. We want to thank the terrific team at OV and ITVS for their technical support of this event. That includes Maya Wise, Maya Churi, Beatrice Castillo, and Patrick Avila. And a special thanks to creative consultant Ginny Rediker and project editor Tony Grocki for their work with the finalists on their videos. Now, if you haven't gotten enough of Local That Works today, haven't gotten enough inspiration, please check out the Local That Works database. There are over 600 examples of incredible projects. You can see them all at current.org/localthatworks. I know you'll find an idea that's worth stealing or remixing in your newsroom. This event was recorded and it's going to be available for viewing soon. You will get an email from Current with a link so that you can share it with all of your colleagues, anyone looking for some ideas and inspiration. It has been a joy to be your host today. I'm Mariana Dale. Goodbye.